It is just about 8 o'clock, and we have a lot of great information this morning. My name is Barbara Bynum, and I have been helping host the forum for about 9 years. So I'm super excited to welcome you guys here this morning. I look forward to learning something every Wednesday morning that I can make it to forum. And this morning is no exception. So we have two great speakers today. Lloyd Arnold is Director of Aviation for Montrose County, which means he is the man in charge when it comes to all things at the airport. And he's going to tell us about the county's plans for the airport, some upcoming expansion, some great grant money. Oh, I don't want to ruin all your news. I'll stop there. And then after Lloyd, we're going to be joined by Matt Skinner via Zoom because it's that time of year. And Matt is joining us, and he's going to talk about Colorado Flights Alliance, which is the organization that helps work with airlines to book their flight routes into Montrose and Telluride airports and what goes on for that whole process. And it's really fascinating, and it's relevant because not only is it our local airport, but the county participates on that board. Lloyd is the county's representative, and I'm the City of Montrose representative on that Colorado Flights Alliance board. And that'll be really interesting too. And then I ask that you save all your questions for both of them until the end. And that way we can take care of all the questions. And I think we'll have time for questions, so be thinking of them as they talk. And with that, let's give Mr. Arnold a big welcome. Round of applause.
Thank you. Good morning. In 2017, we completed a master plan for the airport. And in that master plan, we have what's called planning activity levels. And planning activity levels are based on the volume and mix of aircraft, passengers, and vehicles that are utilizing the airport. And we use that to trigger capital infrastructure projects. And we currently have 4 major capital infrastructure projects that I will be taking before the Board of County Commissioners. And it's those 4 projects that I'm going to go over today. We'll go a little more in depth into the terminal project because that is the largest project we have. But I'm going to start today by showing you a site plan of the airport and kind of give you a reference to where these projects are taking place. I think I'm going to stand out of the way on this other side. So this is a site plan. There's several elements to the terminal project itself. We start right over here with the new ground support equipment parking. This area right here is going to be utilized by the airlines for equipment that turns the airplanes, de-icing equipment, lab equipment, ground support equipment for the airlines.
You know, we can't make out too much of that. Could you start by orienting us to what exists now?
Thank you. This is the entrance right here. This is the entrance to the airport. This is the parking lot in front of the airport right here. This is the terminal, the existing terminal building. So you would come in and this is the roundabout that goes around the main paid parking here. Does that help?
Yes.
Thank you for that question. So right over here, this would be airside, where that ground parking area is. What you're looking at right here would be the south terminal expansion, 5,000 square feet. We have 8,000 square feet of renovation going on the interior. We have the north expansion, 20,000 square feet and 20,000 square feet indoor and 5,000 square feet outdoor. And then we have the renovation of 44 parking spaces here. So these areas that I just described are one project. That is the terminal construction project. All of those elements are included in that project. The second project we have is an additional 570 parking spaces, 450 right here, and 120 right here. These two areas right here will eventually turn into the ready return for the rental car companies. One of the nice things about our airport is you don't have to go miles to get to the rental cars. That's a convenience that people like. 350 of these spaces will be long-term parking. This area here will become the short-term parking area. And then 100 spaces back here will be overflow for the rental car companies. So that is the second project. The third project would be a controlled access or signalized intersection right here. This is Industrial Drive. On the other side, I think there's UPS and Pepsi and Gordon Composites right down in here. And then the fourth project will be taking place right here. And the fourth project is a hotel, a Homewood Hilton Suites. And we did that project, and a company called Suncor responded, and they will be taking on that project. We reserved an area up here. This is not a current project, but we're planning for the future. Maybe 3 more parking spaces for aircraft so we can expand in the future. So we'll have 7 parking spaces here. It's shown 6 right now, but there's room for 7. And then we'll have 3 more up here. This configuration, these spaces can fit 737-800s, Airbuses, and these spaces over here fit regional jets. So this is the apron plan. On that south 5,000 square foot addition, we have new airline offices over here, and we have an additional 8 counters. The 8 counters are very important because currently we are out of room, and we're having to actually turn down airlines that want to come to Montrose because we simply cannot facilitate them. Right here, we'll have a new IT suite. This is a new kitchen area and restaurant area here. That is on what we call the land side, or prior to going through security. We'll have a new kitchen area here. So after you go through security, this is the area where you currently process through the TSA security lines and go in. We will have a new restaurant area once you are in the hold room. We have a new office suite here, and then we have a new baggage claim here. And we're very excited about the baggage claim because it's pretty congested in that area, and we're going to have twice as much baggage claim as we've had previously. So this is a concourse level. On the concourse level, we have the escalator coming up. We have the elevator section right here. Behind the elevators, we have a dedicated bar. And then we have more concession area and additional bathrooms. And all of this area is going to be post-security, so in the hold room. So the escalators and elevators, you'll be able to go up those after you've processed through security. So this is a rendition of the terminal. It's true to color and true to scale. And so this is what it's going to look like. You can see where we have the existing that comes out to here. We have a large glass gable. This feature right here is actually an indoor fireplace. We're going to have seating right here. There will be a fireplace going right there, and then fireplaces on the interior on the other side. We have a new entry and exit here, a new entry and exit here. This space down here is where the new baggage claim will be, and this space up here is the concourse level hold room. This is the south feature. You can see we have two large glassed-in gables right here. That's going to make it kind of nice. It fits with the overall kind of theme of the terminal and represents the what we're trying to portray to the community is, this is a lot of times the first thing they see, and we want it to be nice. When you go inside here, this is where that gable is located. These would be the 8 new counters right here, and then this is that glassed-in gable on the south end. So most people will recognize this. This is the existing fireplace, and this is the area where you process through the TSA, and this will be the new restaurant area right here. So this is on the concourse level. Post-security, you'll come up the escalators, and the elevator suite is right here. You can see that we also have a glass gable on the other side, so you're looking out on the apron. There's an aircraft right there. And I have been mentioning how relaxing this area is. We already have somebody doing yoga right there. So this is another view of the dedicated bar area. So we have a bar area here and this bar area, and that will be looking out the glass gable to the air side. This is looking out to the parking lot or land side, and this is where one of the indoor fireplaces will be located. And this is just another view of that, of the gable, the fireplace, coming up the escalator, and of course the elevators are right over here. This is the new baggage claim area. This would be that northernmost door that I showed you in the first picture. We're going to have twice the baggage area and a lot more space for customers to move around the terminal. We're fairly limited right now. So this is the air side. This is the big glass gable. This is the bar area right here. And so you can be able to see out on the tarmac. That makes it kind of a nice feature. It's always nice to have a bite to eat and a drink and be able to see the aircraft as they're coming and going. One of the things that is going to be real nice for us is you can see we have a jetway here. And currently we don't have jetways, and everybody has to walk on the apron. It's very similar to what you do in Bravo Terminal in Denver, but in inclement weather, when it's raining and snowing, it'd be a little bit more convenient to have a jetway to walk down. So we have 2 jetways that we are going to construct for during this terminal construction. This jetway and the northernmost jetway. We are not getting the jetways with this particular project. The jetways are about $2 million a piece, so we needed an additional $4 million. We'll probably get those within 2 years of completing the terminal project. I'm gonna go over some numbers with you now real quick. So the terminal project and the parking lot expansion project, those 2 projects are about $42.5 million. The Signalized Intersection is estimated to be $2.25 million, and 1.5 million of that is coming from the city of Montrose that are participating in that project also. The Hilton Homewood Suites being constructed by Suncor is estimated to be approximately $26 million. So we are currently at 129,192 enplanements. And an enplanement is just it's a representation of somebody who purchases a ticket to leave your airport. So if you're at 130,000 enplanements, you're basically pushing about 260,000 people through your terminal. And our terminal is much too small to be accommodating those numbers. We are currently on pace to have 171,265 enplanements this year, which would be a record year for Montrose Regional Airport. It was estimated that we would recover in a year and a half to 2 years, but we have surpassed that, and we'll most likely have a record year. Just going to give you an idea of kind of the way we've tracked over the last 5 years. In 2017, we had 123,000 and change for enplanements. In 18, we had 134,000 passengers. In 19, we jumped up to 160,000 passengers. And then we came across 2020, and we dropped back down to about 101,000 passengers. And now we are on pace to have a record year in 2021. So I don't think I need to explain what happened to us in 2020. But we took a little bit of a hit there, as did most airports throughout the United States. Just for reference, when we were going through the master plan, we had 7 public meetings, and we had a lot of public input. That's how we constructed that master plan. After we did that, we had 2 additional meetings, public meetings for the design. And then we've had 5 stakeholder meetings. So we've had a total of 14 public meetings regarding the terminal expansion. We're trying to get the word out and let everybody know what's going on. So I will be taking 2 things before the Board of County Commissioners today. About a $13 million federal grant, which is entitlement and discretionary money through the Airport Improvement Program. And I will also be taking the terminal construction project before the Board of County Commissioners. And that is $33,131,000, I think $241.45 to be exact. And we're very excited about this project. These are budgeted projects. We've been planning on those. I think that this will help facilitate the traffic in and out of our airport. It'll help the western slope of Colorado. And we've had nothing but support for these projects, so I thank you for that. I think that's all I have for now. I'll let Matt speak, and then I'll be available to answer questions. And then I'll talk a little bit about the tribute to aviation at the end and let everybody know what we have coming in for the tribute. Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. Let me do some computer magic and bring Matt into the room. Look at this. Good morning, Matt. We see ya.
Morning, how's everybody?
Fantastic. We can hear you, and I'll go ahead and do this so you can kind of see the room. And
nice.
If you share your screen, I think we're good to go.
Great. Hang on just one sec. Let me pick the right screen. Actually, that one. All right. Everybody got the visual up there, Barbara? We all right?
Yep.
You can hear me okay? Yeah. Great. Hey, thanks for having me again, Barbara. And my apologies to the group. As as this year goes, as Barbara mentioned, I am actually in quasi-quarantine due to my son's 5th grade class. And so I thought it best maybe not to be speaking in a room full of people right now. But really appreciate all the lengths everybody went to get the tech set up so we can still do this. And as always, just love coming to this group. Appreciate the collaboration. And then as to what Barbara mentioned as well, Colorado Flights is a regional organization with participation from Montrose City, County, Telluride, and Mountain Village cities and county. And really funding coming from across a variety of public and private entities, Telluride Ski Resort as well, businesses, real estate, etc. And so just appreciate all the support, all the collaboration as we work on all these things collectively. Our larger mission, which I will not go down the rabbit hole of today, is of course economic sustainability and vitality on the Western Slope, and really putting these air pieces in both for tourism-based businesses, but also for business development along the 550 as one of our core focuses. So what I got for you today is really the fun, sexy part of where we're going to fly, interspersed with some of the less exciting data that supports it, or less exciting numbers, etc. I realized I hadn't spoken to you guys since just before the pandemic, so I thought I would give you kind of the 10-minute, year-and-a-half recap that kind of leads to where our schedule is today, and to the numbers that Lloyd's talking about. And so, if you all recall, right before the pandemic, we have been the fastest growing airport in Colorado, 5 years running. I haven't checked those because the numbers are so wonky in the last 18 months, but we were charging along, and everything was going well. We had been developing larger networks with different airlines, really having seen American expand dramatically, United as well, adding routes to Delta, and also expanding geographically across the states. As Lloyd said, we had a small, and if anybody can pick out the point where COVID hit here, it was pretty much a dramatic stop once COVID hit. To that year, though, we were up a solid 10 to 15% rolling into March. And it'll be funny because it'll be kind of the opposite of what happened this past winter. Needless to say, when the resort shut down and basically national travel shut down, we went straight down to the floor. However, there's some fairly bright, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, in this little sliver of traffic, there's actually some really positive things that happened. And what had been going on is that, as we built up these relationships with our airline partners and the strength of our network, it had translated over into what we were able to sustain. And as a comparison, Grand Junction actually lost their Denver flights where we retained ours. They were flying Grand Junction's flights through our airport, stopping in Montrose, going to Junction, picking up, coming back, and going to Denver. And that was a real telltale for us as to really the strength and the build that we had put into the Montrose Airport, over the past 5 to 10 years. And so took that forward as we were able to start pushing into summer. And really what we tried to do was take a long-term outlook. What are the pieces we can put on the board for recovery? And what happened that summer was they came to us and basically told us they didn't want to fly anything except Dallas and Denver. And so with the strength and the backing of the guarantee program, those historical relationships, we were able to salvage Chicago and Houston out of that, as well as some heavier frequencies out of those other markets. The summer was kind of a funky time, as Lloyd was saying as well. We were battling back. The orange is actually 2019, and the blue is 2020. So as we went through the summer, overall we did about half the number of passengers we normally do, and that was summer of 2020. But the bright spot was, as you could see the line starting to narrow towards the end of the summer, as travel started to open up just slightly and things began to recover. And with that, we saw a huge turn in the airline industry. Business travel was not recovering, but leisure was starting to show a pulse. And so for the first time in our lives on this end of it, because we have built most of the traffic out of this airport on leisure, with hopefully expanding business, and this is kind of the silver lining of all this, or the big gain, we started to get more attention. We had airlines starting to throw routes at us, and really one of the biggest conversations that we had, of course, and had been ongoing, was with Southwest. We had already talked to them about this winter, and they had gone with Steamboat for this initial winter, but we had been on schedule for actually the current winter. What happened was that got moved up very quickly, and so what we started to see was a ton of folks coming at us with options, and so we were able to plug those Southwest flights in, which was just a huge piece of the puzzle for the 550. We were happy to see Boston come online and see the rest of our routes start to recover as well. and really able to put some capacity back into the airport. Now, we knew that the airport, that the flights were not going to fill. It was going to be a tough winter, and that's where the guarantee program helped us keep all those pieces on the board again. You know, we dipped pretty significantly into our reserves to maintain our core routes, to add a couple, and really to entice Southwest finally to pull the trigger. And as that went, I think it's one of the larger pieces is where we drove that with tourism. We drove that with having been the fastest growing airport over 5 years. We, ourselves and Steamboat, are the first regional routes that Southwest has ever flown. You can call them feeder routes or whatever the case, but you know, our past traction has really led to that day where we're able to put them in place. But as the translation goes, and just to go off there specifically, that flight is being much more utilized by locals going out than any of our other flights. And it's also one of the biggest things that we think in our sphere to have happened for business development along the 550 in the last 10 years, especially with air. Because now we have such better daily access, we have a network to connect to, and those conversations that we continue to have with all the business development entities around, up and down the corridor here, really have gained a ton of traction. So we were able again to bounce off of, I guess, the horse we rode in on leisure, but translate that into the larger economic play for the Western Slope. As we went into winter, it was kind of that opposite we talked about. We kind of struggled along. Blue is actually, orange is 2019, and blue is 2021. And so we kind of struggled along, until we finally saw the world start to open back up to travel significantly. And you know, we had pretty good demand. We saw a lot of drive come in, as we all know, especially up and down the Montrose streets. And drive helped shore up a bunch of it. You know, so overall we were pretty cold. The air was running down about 10 to 15%, and then boom, the world opened up in March, went off the charts. I think Lloyd didn't mention that. It was certainly a record March. But it shored up a lot of the losses or the gap that we had from early in the season. We've only ended up about 4 to 5% down on 2019 coming out of that. You know, it was very positive then heading into summer, although we still had some battles to fight. More or less, American wanted to yank Phoenix, and we had to go back and fund that again. We ended up guaranteeing a bunch of flights that we had taken off the guarantee again, historically, but we're able to put our network back in place. And really seeing daily Chicago, Houston, Dallas flights. And then again, the big coup was, you know, every time we talked to Southwest, it was, hey, we're going to wait and see for the next season. But we ended up pushing them through the off season, through the summer, through the fall, and now we are looking basically at what is a year-round schedule with those folks, and that includes the Dallas weekend flights, which we're really pleased about. And so everything's been building fairly healthily, and this summer really has gone very well. So the blue is this year, oops, don't click. The blue is this year, and the orange is 2019. And so we're up about 20%, 25% this summer. And what we also like to see is that it's evenly spread across the summer. It's not like some giant addition in the middle of July, which would stress everybody's infrastructure. And so with that, we've got really nice bumps that come in the fall here. You know, this early spring was actually kind of nice. I'm still trying to figure out what event that was. But really a nice even ad all the way across. And that health, again, has helped us push into what's going on this winter. We definitely have had some reshuffling from COVID. We had a couple casualties, unfortunately, a little trade-offs, but again, a full schedule with Southwest, and really full schedules with our other airlines coming from the coast. Boston was unfortunately one of the casualties. That market never reopened last winter. It was very difficult. We're at 100% it's going to fully reopen this winter, so we decided to wait. So we're going to target that for 22-23. And then the other casualty was Charlotte. Strangely, somehow through all of this, we ended up in another pilot shortage, and we're taken out, unfortunately, by that. But the good news was Delta came back to the table with Atlanta, and we were able to shore up the other western routes as well. We're actually adding another Phoenix flight that comes straight from Phoenix into Telluride Airport into TEX that will go along with the Phoenix into Montrose flights. Los Angeles, San Francisco, really heavy targets to come back to their regular schedules too. And seeing our capacities really recover to what everything looked like pre-2019. It is definitely a time of, I guess, in a time in history, a time in the pandemic where we are still seeing accelerated demand for the outdoors, and we expect that to continue for the winter, probably another year and a half. And capitalizing on that, again, it's all long-term planning, looking forward. What markets do we want to add? What routes do we want to add? We had several things on the books before 2019 that we've kind of got in the cooker. You know, do we want to connect on an airline into Northwest, like into Seattle area? what does Florida look like, you know? But for the moment, and try not to have too short of a memory, we remember that last winter was actually very difficult until March. So the real focus for the moment are those core routes, making sure we have traffic on Houston, Dallas, Chicago, New York, you know, Western Seaboard as well, and building to put those pieces back in so we can continue to build and hopefully get them back off guarantees here fairly quickly, and then move again into whatever developable markets we see as our next targets. You know, a quick note to kind of put a capper on, you know, we're very glad that Lloyd and the county, it's just unbelievable what they've done with the airport expansion, you know, because we're running out of room. We would have had a little pinch with JetBlue had we decided to fly them this winter. And as Lloyd said, you know, we're pacing on, you know, a record pace for this year very likely, and really that extra room is going to be needed very quickly. And the translation of that is jobs, of course, and economics to the region. You know, we have a couple of studies. This is the one from CDOT, from CDOT that basically shows 3,000 jobs and about $330 million in annual benefit. You know, we did a study on top of this to extend it, to take it out into the valleys to see how far that benefit, you know, reached. And really we saw another 1,000 jobs, another 100 million in revenues added on top of that. And so, you know, this airport is truly an anchor of the Western Slope. Really where we have seen the expansion over the last few years has been phenomenal. But 2020 was surely a hiccup. And something that kind of reset us, and you know, but putting us in a position with leisure travel right now to accelerate out of it and hopefully recover and do our job for the region, to put all the pieces back in place, keep people at work, and keep the ball rolling forward in a healthy manner. The only other quick piece that I wanted to throw in there is, sorry, I feel like I forgot something on the schedule. I think that was it. Those are the highlights. But one more piece is that we still have our fare search assist service going. So MontroseFlyer.com is a website that finds cheap fares out of Montrose Airport and also has email, etc., to send you the specials each week, or you can search for specific routes if you're looking for something. You can hit that up at MontroseFlyer.com. And then as we head into winter, we're just very excited and really glad to have our network back in place. Really happy to have Southwest still going strong, and looking forward to what we can do for everybody in the future. I think that's what I got as far as presentation goes, and glad to take any questions, but I understand that the airport might be a little bit more exciting of a project.
Thank you, Matt. I think they're both really exciting projects. I can't figure out what I'm most excited about, but for anyone who's ever dropped off passengers at the airport, even if you never fly yourself, a signalized intersection so that you can turn left without fearing for your life was an easy yes on the city's part to be part of that. So, what kind of questions? I'll pass the mic around, and then if you know who your question's for, preface it with that so I can do the technology. And let me give another microphone ready. Lloyd, I'll give you this microphone, and I'll pass this other microphone around.
Okay, Lloyd, I'm like Barbara. I'm excited about the traffic light at the airport because it's impossible to turn left there. So are you going to put a frontage road so businesses to the north and south of the airport can also access turning left, like at the hotel and Humdingers or any of that, to help the other businesses? Because I know there's quite a few businesses near the airport that it's also hard to turn left on to Townsend. Do you see what I mean?
I do, and it would be nice to have a signalized intersection because it's dangerous trying to go south there. But the direct answer to your question is no, we're not going to provide a frontage road at this time. To the north is the state property, and going south we do have Humdingers and some of those businesses. Of course, you couldn't get a frontage road where Humdingers is and then the Hampton Hotel is. You couldn't get a frontage road in there, there's not enough room, but we are not planning on taking a frontage road north at this time. Now, we did look at that option, but we don't have enough room because you have to have a certain amount of turning radius for those vehicles to get into the signalized intersection. And
pull the map up?
yeah, let me see if I can.
Okay, I'll switch over to the map.
use that, it could be helpful. But we simply don't have enough room for turning radiuses for the vehicles that would be coming south from where the state property is, so we couldn't do that. So the state property is right here, and in order to bring a frontage road in this direction, we had to loop the road out like this to bring the traffic in, and there was simply not enough room.
Lloyd, who will own the new hotel that is going up?
Suncor will own the new hotel. We are simply leasing land to that hotel.
If you're leasing it, that means they're not paying property taxes per se, right? They pay like a usage tax instead?
Probably possessory interest tax,
Yeah,
but
okay.
That's probably a Brad Hughes question.
Fair.
Aside from the Telluride Express and those Telluride shuttles, can you explain the shortage, or are there any collaborations happening to increase ground transportation like Uber or taxis or anything for just local Montrose?
So we have 13 ground transportation companies and about 8 rental car companies. We do have, on occasion, the taxis have kind of come and gone. We do have one Uber driver who pays the nominal fee. It's about $1 a day to operate an Uber at Montrose Regional Airport. And so the fee's pretty nominal. As you go to larger airports, Uber will actually pay for an area for the Ubers to come and pick up and drop off people. We had contacted Uber. We don't have enough Uber drivers in the area for Uber to actually pay for an area. So right now it's up to the individual drivers, and I know we do have one driver that pays the fee and operates at the airport.
They're like a unicorn though, so good. Oh, I see another hand right in front of me.
Hi, so where would if I don't know what's happening with CO Fire, and where would they be on the map?
So Colorado Fire is looking at the old STW building, and I don't have a diagram for that.
It's off the map.
But yeah, they are looking at the old STW building, and we are working with them to try to facilitate them coming to Montrose. We're very excited about them coming to Montrose. They will have one of their aircraft at the Tribute to Aviation this weekend, and we'll be participating in that. But we're making every effort to get them here to Montrose.
Do you know how many craft they would have? What kind of craft?
They now have 7 seats, single-engine air tankers. They're basically, if you've seen Leonard Felix flying his crop duster around, that is the 802 turbine aircraft. That's their primary aircraft for fighting fire. And then they have several support aircraft that go along with that. So I think they're up to somewhere around 10, 11 aircraft at this time.
We've got a question back here.
Thank you, Lloyd. I may have missed this, but when are the improvements, the expansion, when is that slated to be completed? And then a follow-up question to that about jet bridges. Are there plans to add more jet bridges in the future? I know we had the 2 that you mentioned. Will those still be accessed by going out on the tarmac until those can be purchased? And then long term, will all airplanes be serviced by jet bridges?
Sure, thank you. So I am taking the terminal expansion project, the $33 million project, before the Board of County Commissioners in about an hour. So we'll see if that gets approved, and if that gets approved, then we will meet with FCI. We'll get a tentative timeline figured out, and we'll keep moving forward. With regard to the jet bridges, this particular project, or the 2 projects, like I say, they're approaching $43 million. It's fairly hard to come by that money, but we hope to keep moving forward. I know we're going to have to continue to work on more expansions in the future. The question, will all the aircraft be served by jet bridges in the future, would be no, because the jet bridges don't serve the regional aircraft. As I mentioned before, it'd just be like going into Bravo Terminal at DIA, you actually go down and you walk to those aircraft. But primarily in the winter season, you know, we are getting the 737 and Airbus, the mainline aircraft in. And so those are the aircraft that would be served by the jet bridges.
Thank you. Here's another question.
You know, I really appreciate how close in the airport is, that we don't have to drive a half hour to it. And I appreciate having more than a couple of flights a day in and out. But who's discussing the balance between how many flights we have and impact on health and safety and noise, et cetera, in the community?
Well, I guess my job is to get flights into Montrose and facilitate that traffic for the business community. We haven't necessarily had a push or an environmental issue. We do studies. They're called DNL studies. So the DNL studies are noise studies with regard to noise pollution. And we have everything that is 75 decibels or more within the contours and contained on an airport. So with regard to noise pollution, I would say we don't have an issue. Are you referring to the sheer quantity of aircraft that are flying, or?
Landing aircraft goes over my house, so yeah, quantity.
Quantity? The quantity really depends on the mix. You know, you can bring one 737 in, or you can bring probably 8 RJs to make up for that one 737. So as we upgauge aircraft and bring those larger aircraft in, you're actually decreasing the number of operations that you have on a daily basis.
Lloyd, are there hours that, every once in a while I think I hear a plane in the middle of the night, and are there hours that they can and can't use the airport? Or does it, if something gets delayed, can they end up landing in the middle of the night?
24 hours a day.
Okay.
The airport is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
So, Lloyd, I live in that same flightway, and I've lived in it for 20 years. And I guess the technology of the aircraft engines has improved so greatly that it's really, you know, I mean, sometimes I'll get, you know, one flight every 5 minutes or something come right over my house, and it's not really bad. It's noisier when these small private planes fly around. Even the guy that flies around in the hang glider, there's a lot of noise there. But I have a question for both you and Matt, and this is on the strategic plan. Matt, do you have any input from the Flight Alliance on developing and implementing the strategic plan? And the other one to you, Lloyd, and we talked a little bit earlier, in looking at the strategic plan, how important is highway frontage and visibility to establishing a nice looking airport?
Okay, so let's go to Matt first and then Lloyd.
No, I appreciate the question. Yeah, we've been involved with Lloyd and and his agencies since the get-go. Obviously, you know, we don't want to we don't want to make any improvements that aren't connected to corresponding air service planning and development. That's actually, there's some lessons around the country that have gone poorly that way. So, you know, we really appreciated the collaboration. It's been hand in hand. We talk constantly, both with Lloyd specifically and with our board and regional group, about what growth looks like 1, 3, 5 years, what we're planning on, what targets are on the horizon, you know, what thresholds look like for both the operations, as that question was going, and capacities, both for the specific airport conversation as well as for the region, you know, what infrastructures can handle there. And so they're not just slapping some pieces onto the airport. We have definitely gauged it against where we think growth will continue. Tried to be a little optimistic, because the last time, just as a lesson, you know, the airport did a great job expanding, put some, you know, the fantastic terminal area, and we filled that thing in like a year. And so we don't want to do that again. So this time we're trying to be a little more optimistic, but keeping it tethered to kind of a responsible growth arc as we forecast forward.
And then the other part of the question was, I think, the frontage, what the airport looks like.
Sure. I want to back up just a little bit to the aircraft and the flight paths and how they land. Does anybody know what determines how a plane, what direction a plane is landing in?
Which way the wind is blowing.
Wind, exactly. So aircraft take off and land into the wind. And so we conduct wind studies, and the predominant wind is coming from 170 degrees, and that's why the ILS is on runway 17. But that really determines the flight path. You'll notice when April, May, and June come along, the flight path seems to change a little bit, and that's because the direction of the wind is changing in Montrose. And the frontage, I think, is very important. Has anybody ever flown out of Durango? You go through some fields, past a couple dairies, a granary. You're not actually sure if you're going to the airport or not, and it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And, so we have an airport that is much more convenient to utilize. I think the frontage is important because it's a marketing advantage for the airport. And certainly when we get the hotel in there, people are going to be able to come down from Telluride and stay in the hotel and not have to get up at 2, 3 in the morning to make their flight. Also, if they come in late, they'll have a hotel on site to stay at and be able to get some rest before they go up the next morning. That's one of the advantages of having that right there.
Lloyd, you made the point that bigger planes reduce the number of movements of aircraft on the airport. At what level do we end up with a FAA tower on the airport versus the electronic systems that you now employ?
Sure. So the trigger point for an FAA tower is 150,000 operations per year. An operation is a landing and a takeoff. Two things, we are a significant ways away from that. And the other thing, the FAA has told us that we'll never see another tower in the United States again. So what they're doing is they are controlling airports from off-site. You can squeeze the GPS data points so close together that they can create the airport and look at it off-site and control aircraft from remote locations. So there's 2 airports in Colorado who are testing this system right now. And it seems to be working well. They have video cameras set up, and they're controlling aircraft from remote locations. So I don't think that we will ever see a tower.
We're going to use the water tower.
Just a quick question. The car rental area, I've had people fly into Montrose and they could not rent a car. Are they going to make the car rental companies more available? There seems to be a problem there is finding a car once you get into Montrose.
Was that this year?
Yes.
Yeah, actually there's a problem with renting vehicles anywhere right now. Prior to COVID, they depleted their inventories. They sold them off, as they do every year. And then COVID hit, and they couldn't get more vehicles. And so it is a problem right now. It is currently a problem, but I think that we'll recover from that within a couple of years.
Is anyone who hasn't asked, and then I'll go back to you.
I have one.
Let me get her first.
I have one for each of you. Matt, is there any area in the United States that you wished we had airplanes coming to and from, specifically the Pacific Northwest? Has that ever been a discussion? And Lloyd, what about runway? Are we in good shape in terms of runway for expansion?
Great questions, thanks.
So yeah, we definitely have a wish list, and not to tip any hands, but just prior to COVID, we were looking very seriously at Seattle. I kind of teased that earlier. And so, it's been a long question. It's actually a Colorado question. Colorado's always struggled with air traffic to the northwest. And this is more specific to the mountain resort and tourism base that we built this service off of. But there's been a bunch of tries and not a lot of success, although it's starting to change now. A lot of the shared ski passes have helped that. We've seen a flight go into Steamboat for a few years now that's it's not really killing it, but it's doing okay. And so we've started to have those discussions. Also, Delta has moved into Seattle very heavily, so all of a sudden there's two viable partners up there, both Delta and Alaska. For the moment, we had to make some hard decisions. As I said, a lot of people were throwing the house at us for different things, but we have to be responsible with both the demand and the resources we have. And so the question as to when and how we want to develop new routes coming out of COVID is a tough one. And so we definitely have Seattle on the radar. We love Austin, Texas. We want that Boston flight back. We see the central eastern seaboard as a potential opportunity, or that seems to kind of waver back and forth. And then further into the southeast, is there a Florida route that might serve us well at an airline down there? So we definitely have a wish list and pieces of the puzzle that we hopefully can put together. Because if you look at that air map, it surely has a big gap in the upper northwest corner. And then, sorry, what was the second part of the question? I was going to segue in there for Lloyd.
I think is the runway gonna serve the capacity?
So to segue into Lloyd's, the fact that we have a 10,000-foot runway under Denver-type conditions here is actually one of the greatest advantages that we have in air service planning, among a number of other things. My joke to people is that if we really had to, we could land the space shuttle here, on a bad day. And so with that, when I go in to talk to airlines, we have such a huge advantage walking in there over, the Aspens of the world, the Eagles of the world, if you want to compare mountain airports. And then we're also on par with Grand Junction and Durango. So I'll hand that to Lloyd with the fact that our runway is actually one of our great assets.
Sure. So capacity, we call that throughput, and that has to do with the mix of aircraft and how many aircraft you can actually take off and land in a given period of time. So we do have two runways, a 10,000 foot by 150 foot primary and a 7,500 foot by 100 foot secondary runway. So the throughput capacity of those two runways, we could handle everything from Montrose, Grand Junction, Gunnison, Vail, and we would still have capacity for more aircraft. So we won't run out of throughput capacity for many, many, many years.
It's fun trivia, but the most expensive road in Montrose County is the airport runway. But my husband argues that doesn't count. Wait, and then I'll go back to Jim.
Okay.
Yeah, just quick.
So Lloyd, the city is going to have plans to redo their public works department and so forth. And that really seems like it's really too close to airport operations as far as, the landing part of it. And we did have a civil aviation plane a number of years ago crash, way short of that. Is that a tight space, or is that it seems to me they should look other places to put that public works department.
Is Park Street's the third runway, isn't it? I think we've had a few aircraft on Park Street. So we have what's called an aviation easement over the city facilities right there. And so there's a certain glide scope that we protect, and the glide scope is based on the angle that the aircraft come into the runways. But we do have protection zones that are over that. There's certain things that you can't build in those protection zones. There's electronic facilities, certain antennas, facilities that may emit smoke or steam. There's certain things that are prohibited from being in there, but at this time it doesn't necessarily impact the airport. It did previously, but we have what's called a displaced threshold for runway 31. We basically moved the runway back to provide more protection for the aircraft.
Okay, this question is probably for Matt, but I have a farm that's east of the airport by about a mile, so it's nice that they don't fly over my house. But my question is, in the wintertime when I'm outside working, I notice between about noon and 2 o'clock, there's a huge amount of planes taking off and landing. And I'm just wondering, why is it all bunched in that short time period? I'm sure the airport is packed full of people and skis and everything else. I'm just wondering why is that in that short time period? I don't know, 8 flights in and out of that time period or something like that? Why is that?
You're not the only one to ask that question, and it is actually a heavy focus of ours in trying to streamline airport operations. So fortunately or unfortunately, and I don't know how this works out, but where we geographically sit and the way that the larger airport or airline hubs work, everybody gets here at the same time. So if they're going to optimally fly out of Chicago and of Dallas and of Los Angeles, and they're trying to get as many connections onto those flights as possible, and then they all take off at 8 or 9 or 10 in the morning, exactly that. We seem to have this concentration of flights, and it's even tighter than that some years, like 11:30 to 1. And so we work very heavily and specifically, actually this time of year, with our partners to try to spread those schedules. You know, we've been very successful the last few years, but we've had some where it just went off the rails a little bit even, and have had to make on-the-ground daily adjustments. But we've been well aware of this problem or this congestion, you know, for 5, 6, 7 years now, and our airlines are pretty good partners about it. Now, the challenge though is you can't shift it entirely, right? You can't move that flight out of LA from 10 to 8 because then you miss all the connections that come in on the western seaboard. And so it's delicate moves. It's 15, 30 minutes here, and it's just a little bit of a, I don't know what kind of game, a chess checkers game in trying to line them up. And it's definitely something that, you know, we have to do to help with the airport operation. If everybody gets here at the same time, leaves at the same time, we're going to have an hour and a half wait at TSA. Check-in's going to be a disaster. The bag claim's going to be overloaded. So there's real actual functional operational issues that we are taking into account with the scheduling. And so to that end, yes, it is something that we face, and we work with it every year to try to spread it out. And it's also, you know, somewhat just a result of success, and with the added frequencies we've talked about, with some of the mainline jets coming from the East Coast, along with, you know, 3 a day coming out of Denver. And so just trying to balance all those things. You know, as Lloyd said, the runway's fine. The airport we are putting right now to the test on its capacity, and what will also help this dramatically, of course, is the expansion project that Lloyd and the county have going, and should help mitigate really some of the challenges we're seeing now. But as it is, we'll just do it by hand until that day.
Thanks. We only have a few minutes left. I'm going to try and squeeze in one last question and then turn it over to Lloyd for his announcement.
I think the project we have going is very nice for Montrose and our area. My concern is for the city and county to look at the shabbiness of Townsend Avenue coming down to the airport with open dirt ditches, and is there a way to improve that to make it look much better for everybody?
So I really appreciate the service station going in. It's the Maverick. That was a great improvement for that area, because we did have quite an eyesore go in there. I think as time goes by, all of those areas will be improved. I know the frontage there, part of that is drainage, and would have to look at probably piping some of that, or the city would, as it goes down the highway there. But with regard to the airport taking on those projects, it's probably out of the scope of what we would do.
Thanks. And then your quick announcement about this weekend, and then I will wrap it up.
Yeah, so Tribute to Aviation this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 4. We have aircraft coming in from all over the United States, Arizona, Florida, Maryland, Oklahoma, California, Virginia, Louisiana, Texas, Kansas, areas here in Colorado. We have a significant array of military and civilian aircraft, and we hope to see you out this weekend. We do have the B-52 coming back, which is very exciting for us. And the event is basically focused around education for the kids. So Saturday, Sunday, 9 to 4.
It's awesome. How many of you have been to Tribute Aviation before? If you haven't been, it's amazing. The first time I went, I was like, why haven't I been going every year? It's so cool. Thank you so much to our speakers. Let's give them a big round of applause.